on the very day that Mr. Modi was taking the oath of office, we saw a heinous terrorist attack in Jammu region. On the very day that the Pakistanis, the political leadership in Pakistan, was sending these messages to India, you had another message come from the militant military leadership or the Mullah military alliance in Pakistan. There could also be some Pakistani regulars, either ex-servicemen or serving members of the Pakistan Armed Forces, who could be behind these attacks. The civilians will say that, look, we want good relations with India, but you have to strengthen us so that we can put the military in its place. And the military will continue to play the bad cop. They want to test the ground. They want to test the resolve of Modi 3.0, and most importantly, they want to test the threshold of tolerance of the Indian state. The Shehbaz Sharif and Asim Munir visit to Beijing around the time the Indian election results were coming out would have also seen consultations on the India issue. On the day Prime Minister Modi took the oath of office, there was a greeting for him from the Pakistani side, the Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, who sent a very terse one-line message felicitating Mr. Modi. Mr. Modi responded in kind, a one-line message thanking him for his good wishes. But the real surprising part was that Shehbaz Sharif's elder brother and the man who actually is the political boss in some ways of the ruling party in Pakistan, Nawaz Sharif, 3 times Prime Minister of Pakistan, he sent a somewhat more effusive message to Mr. Modi, calling for moving forward, improving relations between the two countries, and Mr. Modi responded likewise. Now, this got the hopes of a lot of people that maybe some things could start moving forward on the India-Pakistan track. But I think much of this optimism is misplaced. Now, these are very much the same people who earlier, before the elections, were speculating that once the election is over, both countries could be getting together, into some kind of dialogue, some kind of peace process going on between them. There was no reason, there was no rationale, there was nothing on the ground to suggest that something like this would happen. But these very same usual suspects also saw this exchange of messages as something very, very positive, and started, waxing eloquent about how this is an opening towards improving relations. Now, I don't know whether it is because it is to disabuse this optimism, or it was part of another plan. But on the very day that Mr. Modi was taking the oath of office, we saw a heinous terrorist attack in Jammu region, in Riyasi, where Hindu pilgrims were killed in cold blood by Pakistani terrorists. Now, I say that these are not local but Pakistani terrorists because we've seen over the last 2 or 3 years a number of attacks take place in Jammu region, and it is the assessment of Indian security agencies that these are not local terrorists from Kashmir or the Jammu region. Most of these are guys from Pakistani terror groups like Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed, which incidentally have made a comeback in Pakistan over the last few months under the guardianship, if I might call it that, of the Pakistani military chief, army chief Asim Munir, who had earlier been the ISI chief when the Pulwama attacks took place in 2019. And so he's a man very well versed in terrorism, in export of terrorism. And under his watch, we've seen the Jaish-e-Mohammed and the Lashkar-e-Taiba and other groups actually hold open demonstrations, have these blood-curdling calls seeking the massacre of Hindus in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. So it is the assessment of Indian agencies. The attacks in Jammu region, which we've seen over the last few years, are either these guys or there could also be some Pakistani regulars, either ex-servicemen or serving members of the Pakistan Armed Forces, who could be behind these attacks, given the nature of these attacks, given the kind of operations that have been carried out. So on the very day that the Pakistanis, the political leadership in Pakistan was sending these messages to India, you had another message come from the militant military leadership or the Mullah military alliance in Pakistan, sending their own kind of messages to India. This is, again, there's nothing new in this. This is old hat for Pakistan. In the past, what they used to do is that they used to follow a single parallel track approach, that we will continue to sponsor terrorism with India, but we will also have talks with India. This was, kind of trying to balance the relationship in a way that things don't spiral out of control. Over the last few years, they seem to have hit upon the idea of having a dual parallel track approach. So one track is, of course, talks plus terror, which India finds abhorrent. But the second track is that, the good cop, bad cop routine, that, the civilians will say that, look, we want good relations with India, but, you have to strengthen us so that we can put the military in its place, and the military will continue to play the bad cop, and to try and, buttress the argument which is being made by the good cop, the civilians. And frankly, there are enough patsies in India who will fall for this. And you can see that in their writings when they advocate good relations with Pakistan, no matter what. Some of these are politicians, journalists, all kinds of other people. So this is the dual parallel track approach which the Pakistanis seem to be adopting. And the hope is that we don't fall for it. But I think I don't want to get into the details of the kind of terror operations that are taking place in Jammu and Kashmir, although I think that the situation has improved tremendously in the entire Union territory. But the fact of the matter remains that some of this terrorism has moved south of Pir Panjal, and not recently. It's been there for the last 2-3 years. And there are a number of reasons for that, which I don't want to get in at least in this episode. But the important thing is, what is the messaging which is coming from across the border? So I think it is very clear that at one level, there are the spoilers in Pakistan. There will always be. And basically their message is that, look, this is that part of that dual track, parallel track approach, that, look, there will be these spoilers. So the only way to get rid of the spoilers is not that the Pakistanis act against the spoilers, but that the Indian side should continue to turn the other cheek as far as these spoilers are concerned, continue to bleed, don't retaliate, continue to give us what we want. Otherwise, the spoilers will take over. That seems to be the logic. So one is, of course, the spoilers, and these are not only in the military, but these are also in the political realm. So, for example, when the Sharif brothers, playing the good cop, bad cop routine, were felicitating Mr. Modi, sending messages to him of peace, you had the main political party in Pakistan, PTI, which issued statements actually blasting the Sharifs for carrying out, for sending these messages to Mr. Modi. And of course, using the most wild and vulgar language, for which PTI and Imran Khan is famous for. So they use that, and very clearly, this is again something which the Pakistani leadership will say that, you have to ignore these voices. So they'll keep promoting these voices and keep asking us to ignore these voices. But it is also, it's also very important for us to understand, number one, we are dealing with a government. We don't know how long it's going to survive, whether it will be there by the end of the year also. Nobody gives this government more than 2025, but whether it will even survive 2024 is a big question mark. But that is one. But even if, the Indian side was to come to a conclusion that we'll have to deal with whoever is in power at whichever point of time. The fact of the matter remains that I don't think there's anything, these guys have any bona fides, they have any agency for them, for India to be dealing with them. But I think the messaging from the military is just as important. Uh, One is that they have deliberately tried to instill that element that, look, we are very much there. So if you think that a civilian government led by the Sharifs can give you something, that's your choice. But remember, we are the guys, the main guys. One was that. The second was that don't think that we are out of the fray. We are very much alive. We have the potential to stir up trouble in Kashmir. Maybe we can't push things over the edge because then we are afraid of retaliation and crossing your threshold of tolerance. But remember that we have capabilities. We have the potential to keep stirring up trouble in Kashmir or in the entire Union territory. So beware of us. Don't think that we are going to lie down and play dead, that you can walk all over us, that you can ignore us. We are there in the fray. So I think that message was very clear. The third message is very important, and the third message was a kind of a test of Modi 3.0. They have tested Modi in his first term. There was the surgical strikes. They tested Modi again in his first term, but I think the lessons of that continued in the second term. That was the Balakot strike. Now they are testing Mr. Modi again, that okay, he comes with a reduced mandate, he is in a coalition. They seem to have this fond belief that some of his coalition allies, Modi's coalition allies like Chandrababu Naidu or Mr. Nitish Kumar, these are people who will always be soft on Pakistan. So they will ensure that Mr. Modi cannot take any strong offensive action against Pakistan. And they want to test the ground. They want to test the resolve of Modi 3.0. And most importantly, they want to test the threshold of tolerance of the Indian state. And I think this is going to be critical because since 2016, when the first time India retaliated in public, India has retaliated in the past as well, but that was the first time that there was a declared strike across the line of control, which is commonly known as the surgical strikes. There have been strikes earlier, but they were never declared. This time it was in your face, as was the Balakot strikes. So I think what the Pakistanis want to see is that what is the threshold of tolerance? Is it okay if you kill 10 innocent civilians? Is it okay if you carry out an attack in which 30 Indian civilians die? Is that going to be the threshold of tolerance? If you attack one army camp or two army camps, if you kill 5 army soldiers, is that below the threshold of tolerance or is that above the threshold of tolerance? And I think this threshold is something of a trap for India because, frankly, how do you define the thresholds? Now, I can understand that at one level, maybe it's a cynical kind of an approach. You say that, okay, fine, these small blows should not provoke me into doing something which could lead to a larger conflagration, which of course is certainly not in Pakistani interest, but is probably not also in India's interest. Do we really want to get into a larger conflagration at a time when there are also going to be other headwinds that we'll be facing at the economic level, at the strategic level? Do we want to get into that kind of a thing right now at a time when there is a very good chance of Indian economy taking off? Do we want to go back down? So there are going to be those considerations, but purely at a military level, again, you will have to think this thing through, because if the Pakistanis think that if they kill you in small numbers, they can kill enough of you, and without having to pay any consequences. So I think maybe the government needs to start defining what the thresholds of tolerance are. I think it is also important to understand that there is a political side of the threshold of tolerance, and this is my opinion that when you have a solid majority of your own, perhaps your threshold of tolerance is much higher than what it would be, and I'm talking in a political sense, than what it would be when you don't have a majority of your own and you are running a coalition government. I think your threshold of tolerance comes down at the political level for two reasons. One, because the opposition will be firing, their own barrage at you of criticism, taunting you, lampooning you, questioning you that, okay, you've done many things in Jammu and Kashmir, but what has it led to? So they will be constantly jibing at you and they'll be taking major digs at you, and you have to protect yourself from those barbs of the opposition at a political level. At the same time, the BJP, the ruling party in India, has made certain very tall claims about a very muscular kind of an approach to troublesome neighbors like Pakistan who sponsor terrorism in India. Now, will they be hoist on their petard, or will they stick to their words? So this is a sort of a threshold trap, a commitment trap, which probably gets lowered when you are at 240 seats and you need allies to stay in government. So I think this is something which we will have to see how this plays out in both the military domain as well as the political domain. My own sense is that India will have to start devising policies, devising strategies that disabuse Pakistan of this notion that if they keep killing, 2 here, 3 there, 5 here, then stay quiet for a couple of weeks and then again start the whole cycle of violence and of killings, there will be no consequences. I think consequences will have to be at two levels. One is, of course, a direct level, and I'll come to that in just a bit. But one is that indirect level or the covert level. I think over the last few years, certain capabilities have been developed to punish Pakistan in the same point. Some of those, or in fact most of those, can never be acknowledged, but I think everybody gets the message who's carrying that out. The second is the more direct approach, and I think the Pakistanis might be playing with a bit of fire out here, because if the Indians were to activate the eastern border, Pakistan's eastern border or our western border, at a time when the Taliban in Pakistan or the Tehreek-e-Taliban in Pakistan are mounting attacks and there is a lot of talk of new military operations against them, you open a second front against Pakistan at this point in time. Your posturing is that you could step inside Pakistani controlled territory to strike at them. Pakistan will be forced to divert a lot of troops to the eastern front. And that catches them in a bit of a pincer. I think that is not something the Pakistanis would really desire, but I think that is something where we can hold some leverage over them. But I also think that maybe because they expect something like this to happen, the Shehbaz Sharif and Asim Munir visit to Beijing around the time the Indian election results were coming out would have also seen consultations on the India issue, on how the both countries can work together, collaborate to catch India in a kind of a pincer of their own. So if India was to increase pressure on the western front with Pakistan, the Chinese increase the pressure on India's northern front, so try and balance it out. That is a possibility we cannot entirely ignore. Of course, then India will need to do other things to balance out the Chinese, uh, and things that the Chinese are not really going to like. Uh, and that, and I'm not just talking about the Quad, but I'm talking about many other things, which not all of them can be spoken about publicly. But I think that's a game that all sides can play. But from the Pakistani point of view, if India was to start increasing the pressure and catch them in this kind of a two-front situation, that is one possible thing that can be done. Whether this means ending the ceasefire, which, to be honest, also works for us, uh, or has worked for us over the last so many years. Uh, but if need be, you might need to do that. Whether it means that you carry out more forays into Pakistani controlled territory and declare it openly, that is something that the government will have to figure out. But I think we cannot afford to fall in this threshold trap anymore, because that is a bit of a free pass for the Pakistanis. And just as the Balakot attacks change some of the equations between India and Pakistan, I think the Indian security establishment will have to devise measures to ensure that this kind of a thing is not allowed anymore. So that brings us back to the main question, that where does this leave the India-Pakistan relationship and all that optimism that had been expressed about it. And frankly, I think it leaves us where we were before the elections. I did not foresee any change simply because I did not see any change in the Pakistani attitude towards India or the kind of hostility there is in Pakistan towards India and the kind of inimical steps that they have taken against India. So, frankly, I don't think it really changes anything in that respect. Just too bad for the optimists. But I think we are moving into a territory which is going to be very dangerous because of the kind of brinkmanship that the Pakistanis have started indulging in. I don't see how Mr. Modi can take this line down, regardless of whether he's in a coalition or not. I think he's not a man to turn the other cheek, but let's see what his response is going to be.